everyone, and welcome back to the Workbench. Today I'd like to do a video in response to the Mr. GunsnGear video that he posted recently that's gotten quite a bit of controversy, as it was going to and he knew, and that is the Tactical Dogma video, talking about whether you should depress the slide release to chamber a new round on lockback after an empty magazine, or whether you should run the slide, i.e. take it back, slingshot effect, let it go, let it bring a new round into the chamber that way. So I've got a few examples here laid out. And we're going to start with the Smith & Wesson M&P9. I'm using dummy rounds, and before we get started on this, here's my bag of dummy rounds, so if you don't believe me. Anyway, I recommend everybody keep dummy rounds in every caliber that they have. Anyway, so moving on. What is faster? Well, I've done both with my shot timer here, and I have found that when from a starting point with the magazine slightly inserted already to kind of take out the oops, I missed part of it. So I would start the magazine just like this, and when the timer starts, I press it in, and then I would run the slide release, and I would also do the slingshot effect. I am 0.45 seconds, so just under half a second, from the time the buzzer goes off to the time that I can get this seated and drop the slide. 0.45 seconds. Now, running the slingshot effect from the same position, I'm 0.78 seconds-ish. So you could say that I am 100% slower. You could say that I'm 2 to 3 tenths of a second slower. You could look at it many different ways, right? Statistics can lie. So you could say I'm 100% slower doing it the slingshot effect way. Well, okay, but that only equals about 3 or 4 tenths of a second. It's really not that long. Ultimately, what I want to say in this video, and the message I want to get across, is there's no right way, there's no wrong way. There are ways that work with certain guns that don't work with other guns, which we'll get into here. But it's all about getting back on target, and how long does it take to do that? That's really the time you need to be concerned with. How long does it take to get back on target once that round is in the chamber? That's where this comes into play. When you throw it in like this, your hand's already there, so you can get your grip on the firearm. Whereas when you run the slingshot, by the time the gun is chambered, a round is chambered in the gun, you're here. And then you've got to recorrect and come back out here and find your grip. It's just not as efficient a movement. I time myself with this pistol and time myself with this pistol. Some might say, oh, well, with the Smith & Wesson, you get the auto load feature if you slam the magazine in hard enough. And that's true. But they say, oh, it doesn't happen with Glocks. PMag, not even the factory magazine, so it weighs less. Loaded just fine for me. So not all do. It all depends on how hard you're willing to slam that magazine home into the gun. For me, polymer guns, I've got no problem doing it. So why would some people run the slingshot effect versus just pressing the slide release? Well, there's a few things to take into consideration here. Look at where the slide release is. For me, in my hand, I mean, this is my natural grip, and I can reach it just fine. Some people can't reach it. It's a matter of being able to reach out, kind of like on the Glock here. This magazine release is not an easy thing to press. I actually have to break my grip just slightly. You notice these fingers move just slightly to drop the magazine. Now, it's not much movement, but it is movement. Same thing with the slide release. Some people need to break their grip to press it, so they opt to keep their shooting hand, right? So shooting finger, shooting hand, strong hand, gripped normal, and operate the slide that way. Another reason, Smith & Wesson here has ambidextrous slide release right here. So even if you're a left-hander, you can drop the slide. You can also lock it back. It's that easy. But on firearms like Glocks, that's not an option. You can't reverse the slide release, and it's not ambidextrous. So that would be a reason why a left-hander would do something like that. So we've talked about not being able to reach the slide release, or not having it on your proper side of the gun if you're a left-hander. What about when there's not a lot of gun to grab onto? Like in the instance of this car. I mean, you can see just from the size of this pistol that it's tiny. There isn't a whole lot to grab onto there. Whereas my magazine, or my slide release rather, that's a nice big slide release. I can get really, really good purchase on that and good leverage to run that home. It's very easy to do. When is another instance you would not want to use a slide release? Well, how about when there isn't one? Look at that beautiful thing. Isn't that pretty? Ugliest gun I think ever made. Anyway, there's no slide release on this. Slide, stop, slide, release. In fact, the only way you can get this thing to lock back without a magazine is to lock it in the frame, at which point it does become a slide release. But on an empty magazine, if you're shooting and it runs dry on an empty magazine, the only way to get it back in to battery, get it round chambered, is to run the slide. Now, on something like this, number one, it weighs about a half a ton, and number two, there's so much to grab onto here. I mean, if we do this again, look how much there is to grab onto. That is, I can almost barely cover it with my hand, that's how much there is. There's plenty of purchase there, whereas something like the little car, there isn't a whole lot to grab onto. Also, I don't know if you can see behind me, but it is hot in here. This probably you can't see because of the glare, but I'm at 102 right now on that thermometer. So it's a warm one out today. That's another thing to think about. My hands are sweating. So if I'm trying to run a slide that doesn't have very good serrations, clock, my hand could slip off. Might I get enough on it to grip it enough to pull it back and let it go and have it chamber around? Maybe. But again, I'd rather push the button that, for me, is more efficient. As I said before, I'm all about efficiency of movement. So when I shoot in competition, I want each and every movement to be only as much movement as necessary to accomplish the task. So on my 3-gun rifle, which you can see here, I have a bad lever, as you can see here. And if you watch my AR install video, you can see the installation of one of these. It's very easy. It sits right there. So when I run a brand new magazine into a bolt that's been locked back on an empty one, I opt to just run the bad lever to chamber a new round. And that looks like this. So conversely, you could slap the ping pong paddle, which looks like this. Again, not that much longer. But think about where my hand is and think about what I just did to the gun. So if I'm here and I get my new magazine in and I slap that thing, not only am I distorting my sights off target more than they already are, but on top of that, now I've just slammed the gun, my hand rebounds, the gun goes the other way. They're moving away from each other. Now I've got to get my grip again. Whereas if I just insert the mag, push the bad lever, I can go from here to here versus going here, here, here. It's much more efficient for me personally to do that than it is for me to do that. So lastly, what I'll say is practice. Get out there, whatever you choose, whether it be slide release or slingshot, practice with it. Become familiar with it, become comfortable with it. Also, get yourself some dummy rounds. Buy dummy rounds for every caliber of firearm that you own. You don't have to get a set of dummy rounds for each gun that you own, but if you've got a couple 9s, get some 9mm dummies. That way you can practice without spending ammo. It's free practice. So with that, I'll say thank you all very much for watching. I will talk to you again very soon. Hello everyone and welcome back to the workbench. Nope. Take 2, already. A lot of controversy, so I'm going to weigh in on what I think. Nope. Try again, take 3. Today I wanted to do a video, and I promise this one will be quick. No. Take 5. We're on 5 already. To chamber a new round on an empty... So I'm going to weigh in with what I think. I've got a few different... We're on 7. So they opt to keep their shooting hand, right? So shooting finger, shooting hand, strong hand. If I insert this quickly and hardly, if I insert this magazine quick and hard enough, it will go into chamber normally. If I insert this magazine quick and hard enough, you done, dog?